In the last video I completed all the layers of the warm roof, and in this video I'll add the finishing touches with the fascias and roof covering. There are various options for flat roof coverings, and this is by no means an exhaustive list, but I simply looked around at what the garden room companies were using, and nearly all of them seemed to use EPDM rubber roofs. These were developed in the 60s over in the States and have a life expectancy in excess of 50 years, and that was good enough for me. As it's quite a specialist product though, I checked out some reviews online and found a company called Rubber for Roofs in the UK, which has an excellent website with plenty of information about the product, as well as a host of installation videos as well, just what I like. The calculator automatically works out everything you need. First I input the exact size of my roof, added 3 curb edge trims to stop rainwater from running off the front or sides, and a gutter trim at the back where I want the water to flow over. You also have the option of upgrading to a 1.5mm membrane, which I decided against, and I also had what I needed to install it, but you can also purchase the kit if you need to. This took all the headache of having to do research, and I was actually really impressed with the experience, so I got in touch with the team at Rubber for Roofs about this series, and they were excited to work together, so they're busy creating a calculator with a discount for the viewers of this channel, and I'll cover that in a separate video when it's ready. The one downside to a rubber roof, it is ridiculously heavy. But credit to my girlfriend, once I'd pulled one edge up, she helped with the rest. We gave the roof a final sweep and rolled out the rubber roof. I laid out the EPDM overlapping equally on all 4 sides. Because it comes so tightly rolled, it needs a few days to relax and let the creases work themselves out. So in the meantime, I could move on to other tasks. The gutter trim needs to protrude out so that water runs into the gutter rather than down the fascia. So to create this protrusion, I attached a treated timber batten flush with the top of the roof, and then I could attach the first of the 2-part gutter trim. As UPVC expands, it's important that 5 to 10mm spacing is included between all the trims. This is even more important for darker coloured UPVC, which absorbs more heat and therefore expands more. I could then move on to the fascias. There are various options for finishing the fascias. If you don't have a warm roof or furring strips, then the fascia timber can be left bare if you like the look of wood, or it can be painted. An alternative is to clad the fascia to match your walls. As I wanted my windows and doors to be anthracite grey in colour, I decided that my fascias should match that rather than the cladding. There are 2 types of UPVC fascia which you can get: full replacement and cap over. As I already used timber boards, I just needed the cap over kind, but you could just miss out having the board and get the thicker type of UPVC fascia. As you'll remember, my roof depth was 350mm thick, but I couldn't find any fascias that were exact width in the colour that I wanted. I therefore had the choice of getting either 400mm and cutting them down to size, or to go for 300mm and try to make up the difference somehow. I went for the latter as the price difference was quite significant. To mark where I wanted the nails, I scored along the plastic protector with a tape measure 10cm in from the top and from the bottom, and hit nails partially in. You can see the score lines and nails here. Under the overhangs of my roof, I knew I wanted to have a soffit of some kind, so I wanted the leg on the fascias to be about 9mm lower than the overhang itself to later accommodate the soffit. To get this right, I cut some small pieces of 9mm plywood and attached them under the overhang, which I could then remove later on. As I was working by myself, I also made a quick jig to support one end of the fascia while I attached the other side. I attached the fascias to all 4 sides in the same way and used joint trims where 2 fascias met. I used a few pin nails and glue to attach it to one fascia only, and as before, the gap allows the board to expand. For the corners, I cut notches where the 2 fascias met and used corner trims. Again, these are glued to one side only to allow for expansion. Now, on the 3 sides where I would have the EPDM edge trims, I had strips at the top which needed to be flush with the fascia. To remedy this, I ripped some 9mm external grade ply on the table saw. I attached and everything was nice and flush and ready to go. I can now turn my attention back to securing the rubber membrane. It had been about a week since I'd spread it out, so it was about as relaxed as it was going to get. I pulled it back to the halfway mark and did one final sweep, as it doesn't adhere so well if there is a lot of dust. The glue needs to be applied at a temperature no less than 4 degrees Celsius, which was something I was aware of throughout my summer build as a deadline before temperatures dropped in winter. So if you're using rubber membrane too, this will be your deadline as well.
I get misty just holding your hand. Walk my way.
I can now attach the second part of the gutter trim. It's important that this is level or slightly below the top of the EPDM so as not to act as a barrier for water to pool. I attach with the supplied nails which pierce through the EPDM, first part of the gutter trim and then into the timber batten. I sank them partially in before taking off the polythene wrapper and then hammering them home. The last section is easily cut with a wood saw. I then trimmed off the excess EPDM along all 4 sides with a sharp blade, leaving a 50mm overlap on the 3 sides with curb trims. For the corners I folded the EPDM neatly and stapled them in place. The curb trims are designed as a barrier to rainwater to stop any flow over the front and 2 sides. It achieves this with a sponge-like material which creates a seal between the trim and the EPDM. When attaching, I compress the curb trim about halfway to create that watertight seal. The spacing between trims is covered by joint trims, but unlike those used for the fascias, these just clip on and there's no need for glue. The last thing left to tackle was the corners. These are done in a similar way to the fascia corners, and I used a product called Mitabond, which has a spray component and the glue itself. The spray takes a few seconds to dry, and the corner trim can then be held in place for a few seconds before it sets. And so that completes the roof. I was really satisfied with the finished look of it, and by now it was late October, and I'd been working pretty solidly on the garden room for the past 7 weeks. It was now reasonably watertight, and this is how I left it over winter, while I focused on other things, including finding a new job. The roof held up really well, and unusually for London we got some quite deep snow, which is a heavy load for a flat roof to take, but there was no movement in it or the foundations at all. One thing I did tackle is something which has been omnipresent in these videos, the massive pile of rubble from my garage demolition in part 1. It was a good job for winter as it's very labour intensive, so it kept me warm, and it took about 4 8-yard skips to get rid of the lot. But after it was done, it was great to see the garden run properly from the house. In the next video, I'll discuss what this Tyvek house wrap is all about and install the windows. See you then.